who starts, who sits, and how to become the greatest of all time. This is the Fantasy G.O.A.T.
Well, Week 8 is in the books. Now it's time to get after Week 9. Welcome to the Fantasy G.O.A.T. I'm Mike Davis. That's Jason Feinberg. Jason, give us an update on your fantasy football life right now.
Halloween came a week early for me. It was a scary, scary week. But, again, story of my fantasy life this season, I can't get a guy to get through the game. Jordan Love was this last week. I don't know who's going to do it this week.
Well, you got your official scary lineup. You always play Scary Terry during Halloween week. So we're going to be getting to that later on the show. But let's talk about what we're doing today. Last week, he told you to pick up Cedric Tillman. And guess what?
Huge.
What did he do? He went off scoring almost 30 points. Ian Ritchie from Full Time Fantasy is going to be here in the studio with the top waiver wire ads. Plus, we got Dr. Nithin Natwa joining the show, giving us advice on what to do with the injury to Jacksonville's rookie stud wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. I got him in a few leagues, so I can't wait to hear Dr. Natwa on that. And later on, we got a GOAT cast from Sam Argier. But first, we're going to play a game of livestock, this or that. All right, Jason. So first up, the big guns are back in LA. We all know you love yourself some Puka Nacua and some Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Who are you riding with, though, for the rest of the year?
This is like choosing a favorite sibling, as a father. I could be the father to either one of them. But for this one,
you're all three good-looking guys.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
You know what? I have half of Kupp in my leagues and half of Nacua in the other half. So you give me one. I'll take one and you take the other, and it doesn't matter to me.
Well, you know what?
I'm confident.
I think Puka looked really good coming back last week. Obviously, Kupp found the end zone. But I think the big thing here is just Puka's 23 and Kupp is 31. So that's the big thing. Plus, there are rumors that Kupp could get traded to a contender. They're 3-4 in the NFC West. So, it's tough to tell. But I probably would roll with Puka if I had him.
Well, you definitely have the youth going there. And frankly, the great. By the way, his hair grew a little bit since he was last on the field. That was glorious.
Yeah. Well, we love both of those guys. All right. So if you got either one of them, you got to roll with them. Next up, we got two starting quarterbacks who are going to be top streaming options. Now, we got old man Joe Flacco from Audubon, but he plays in Indianapolis. And, of course, famous Jameis Winston in Cleveland. Both of these guys. Jason, you told me you're big on Jameis.
I am. I'm putting a lot of faith in him in two leagues. One of them because I have Stroud, and I don't feel confident with him. And then Jordan Love, he's not playing. So I'm going with Jameis on both of them. However, it may not be too late to pick up Flacco in one. He is on the waiver wire.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind, I don't want to put all my eggs into the Jameis basket, and if I do, I'm not watching the game. I'm going to look at the score at the end.
And listen to his post-game interview. That's the best thing you can do.
The little M&M.
Flacco is available in our league that we're in together. I actually like both of these guys. I think Winston, it's so clear that he's such a step up from Watson. So it's amazing that Stefanski was saying that Watson gave them the best chance to win. But both of these guys, I think you pick both of them up and you kind of roll depending on the week who they're playing. The problem is Winston, he still has to face Pittsburgh twice. He's got a lot of tough matchups he's got to face in that division.
This is so different than a typical backup quarterback that you would pick up on the waiver wire, because both these quarterbacks, their coaches were handcuffed by big contracts.
Right.
Whereas in a lot of cases, it's like, the backup is not going to be as good.
Exactly.
In both these cases, they're better.
Yeah, you can really roll with them, especially in Stroud cases as well. Okay, finally, let's stay on that same theme there with that QB change in Indy. Who benefits more from Joe Flacco coming into the offense? Is it Josh Downs or is it Michael Pittman Jr., two wide receivers with a lot of injury issues?
Yeah, I think Josh Downs has the higher ceiling, and I think possibly the floor also. So I'd have to go with Josh Downs. I wouldn't be super sad. I have Pittman in one league, but I got some guys that are better, so I guess it'd probably be Downs for me.
Yeah, I think Downs is having the more consistent year, even though he's typically a boomer bust player, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
But Pittman should have, he was going in round 2 or 3 in some leagues. So this is a guy that needs to do some more work. Obviously, it's hard to get going there, but I think I would take Pittman in that situation.
Yeah. Give it 15 minutes because I'm going to choose between Pittman and whoever Ian has for me.
Okay. Well, he does have another wide receiver in that offense, and we're going to be talking about him. But now, guys, it's time for the 2-minute drill. Mariah Janos, MJ from Beat the Odds, is here to share the results from last week's GOAT lineup. Hey, Mariah.
Hello there, friends. All right,
Hi.
we've reached the halfway point in the season, and player performances seems to still be just as unpredictable as they are right now than they were in week 1. So let's just run through these results, see what's going on. Mike, you had quarterback Aaron Rodgers for 17 points, running back Breece Hall for 9.9, wide receiver Devontae Adams 9.4, tight end Tyler Conklin 13.2, hey, for a total of 49.5 points. As for Jason, he ran the risk with Tua, 14.3 points, running back Kareem Hunt 13.3, wide receiver Tyreek Hill 13.2, and Cole Kmet 4.4, total of 45.2 points. So week 8 was rough for the entire state of Illinois and Jason as well, being personally victimized by a Hail Mary, and Chicago's tight end had a rough day for you, Jason. Cole Kmet, who's had at least 3 catches and 34 yards in the past 4 games, just not utilized in the same way for the matchup against Washington, which hurt with just 1 catch, sole target for 14 yards. I will say, Jason, it's a pretty, like I mentioned, a pretty bold move to select a quarterback who's going from a hospital bed to the line of scrimmage, and it's going to impact to his receiving core as well. So he did put up some numbers. He fared, he hung in there. Maybe if he went with a different quarterback, they could have put up a little bit more points, but that's all right. But the 13.2 isn't a good amount of points for Tyreek Hill. I will say the ceiling's much higher for him. He could be in a better situation, but again, your quarterback's coming off of injury. What are you going to do? But hey, you took a chance on him. That's cool. It's a similar situation in New York, though. Aaron Rodgers able to accumulate 17 points. He's still lost to New England, of all teams, and Breece Hall continues to be underutilized. But let's give a round of applause to Devontae Adams, who's finally touching grass this season, for yet another failure of a team. The guy just can't catch a break, so maybe he should have just stayed in Green Bay. Imagine how things would have turned out if Devontae Adams just stuck around in Green Bay. It would have been a lot better than what he's been dealing with for the past few seasons. So we'll see if the second half of the season is a turnaround time for Adams and Jason also to get back on track, you guys.
New England, they beat the New York team. They may need their plane. If they keep this up, they're going to need their plane back from the Dodgers.
It's true.
Yeah.
Listen, I thought that was a no-brainer going with them in a must-win. And, I mean, I snuck it out, but still, it wasn't pretty. Thank God.
I'm surprised,
Conklin got in the end zone.
Yeah. And I don't think Caleb threw to anybody.
No.
Yeah.
No, he had a pretty bad game,
Yeah.
pretty weak game. Well, it wasn't pretty for both of us, but somebody had the win. All right, MJ, thank you so much for all that good stuff. All right, so next up, we're talking with Dr. Nithin Natwa, all the injury fantasy news you need to know. That's after the break.
All right, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. Dr. Nithin Natwa is joining us now to break down the latest fantasy football injury news.
Yes, at Fantasy Docs on social media. The best in the biz. Great to have you with us, Doc.
All right, so here we go. Right off the bat, let's talk about the season-ending injury to Stephon Diggs. They are really shorthanded at wide receiver now in Houston.
Yeah, super unfortunate when you see that non-contact knee injury with the knee slightly flexed and you see the ankle turning. They take a hit to the outside part of that knee. Sometimes you can see a little bit of a buckle or a pop. It's called a pivot shift, and it's basically that ACL rupturing. So there's not too many things that you can call right away, but when you see a player just kind of crumple to the middle of the field, unfortunately, it's a high risk of an ACL. Good thing is that it's about a year recovery. The unfortunate thing is that it's Diggs' contract year, so it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. But I wouldn't say that this is anything close to a career-ending injury or anything like that. but definitely something where he's going to require a ramp-up phase next season.
Yeah, and especially Nico Collins, another guy who's constantly injured there. So Tank Dell is going to be a good play for a lot of people. Okay, Doc, I have this guy in a couple leagues. Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville, stud rookie wide receiver. He's dealing with a rib injury. What should fantasy owners do with him specifically this week?
So there was that weird report about him being out for 2 to 4 weeks that dropped, and then immediately after that, they said that he had a clean MRI. So I think someone unfortunately got a faulty tip, and maybe they had said that he had fractured a rib or something like that. But when they get an MRI and they're worried about a chest injury, they're basically trying to rule out both a rib fracture, because rib fractures don't show up great on x-ray, but they're also taking a look at that cartilage that's on the medial side, or it's like that light gray substance that you see right up there. And you can't see cartilage on an x-ray, and cartilage is really painful and really hard to treat pain-wise. So I think they're ruling that out. But a clean MRI basically tells us that he probably had a bruised rib. He's already out there practicing. I would expect some performance limitation, but not enough for me to bench him. He's been balling out, and wide receivers, they can play through bruised ribs.
All right, Doc, this next guy is kind of the epitome of the way the season is going. Finally, somebody gets some legs. One of these guys we drafted late in the draft, we're talking about running back Tyrone Tracy, has 2 good games, taking over the backfield, and then gets a concussion. Tell us about his situation.
Yeah, it's awful. Exactly what you're saying. You see some player pop off, and then the next day you see them injured, and you're just like, it's not happening to these bench players. It's happening to every starter out there right now. But usually I would say that a player is out for a minimum 1 week. And the big thing about this article here is that everyone used to say that you should just have total rest until you're symptom free, meaning you don't look at your phone, you don't exercise. And there's a huge piece of literature in 2019 that came out that said as long as you get your heart rate up a little bit, not to your max, but just get your heart rate up elevated as soon as you're able to tolerate it, it shortens your symptom duration. So that's why we see people out there on the fields a little bit earlier. And Tracy is out there early. He's already out on the practice field, which means he's already progressed to step 3 or 4 of that concussion protocol. And once they're out on the practice field, I pretty much err towards them being out there on the field for that upcoming week's game. And I would start him. He's a starter now.
Cool.
I feel like I'm back at Northwestern. Dr. Notwell, he's in Chicago. I feel like I'm back at Northwestern with all these studies. I mean, we're doing homework now on the Fantasy Go with this kind of stuff. Doctor, thank you so much. Go make sure you follow at Fantasy Docs on social media. He's always killing it in a very timely manner, Jason, which I love on Sundays. And he's usually holding a cute baby in Detroit here as well. So you got to love that. Thanks, Dr. Notwell. Good luck this week in your leagues.
See you later.
All right, don't go anywhere, because next up we're talking waiver wire with that guy right there. He told you last week to go pick up Cedric Tillman. What did he do? He scored like 30 points. Next up, we're going to talk about the top waiver wire pickups you need. Don't miss out. All right, welcome back to the Fantasy Go. Jason, let's break down the state of the waiver wire right now.
Yeah, it's always busy time on the waiver wire. Ian Ritchie joins us with full-time fantasy. Ian, you've been hot so far. Pretty much every week you've given 1 or 2 like bullseyes. I mean, and Cedric Tillman being the latest one. So now we're turning to quarterbacks, because a lot of them are either missing all of their weapons or just aren't playing at all. So that leaves Joe Flacco is now playing instead of Richardson, who got benched.
Yeah, we love Joe Flacco. You know, there's a statistic that most people don't know. Since the start of 2023, Joe Flacco is the #1 quarterback in the NFL of anybody who's had 5 starts or more.
Wow.
He's averaged 309 yards and 2.6 touchdowns per game. So him being inserted in the lineup will do a few things. It'll really get the weapons going. It'll get Pittman going. It'll get the other receivers going. It'll get Jonathan Taylor going a little bit. And I expect him to lead the Colts to the playoffs. And I expect him to lead you to the fantasy playoffs.
Wow.
Okay. All right, that's good to hear.
Huge.
Now, a guy in Houston who C.J. Stroud has really been big on since he was drafted, Tank Dell. Why do you love him so much?
Big on Dell for a small guy, right? 5'8", 5'9". But when he's been given opportunities, he's done extremely well. Last year, for example, he had 4 games where he had double-digit targets. He had 3 games over 100 yards. He averaged 15 yards a game and 7 touchdowns. This year they bring in Stephon Diggs. He gets hurt with his ACL. Dell's back into a really prominent role in this offense. With Nico Collins out a little longer, I think Dell should really step up, get a lot of action in a high-octane offense here, and be the big recipient.
Yeah, he definitely has the best chemistry with Tank Dell. The other guys, it's like you just don't know. It's like dart throws with Mitchie Woods and
Xavier Hutchinson.
Yeah,
And then, it should help Dalton Schultz a little bit too.
Oh, yeah.
Schultz will get a little bit of a bump, and it'll help him too. But I really believe Tank Dell will be the guy. Coming off a year with 7 touchdowns. He should lead the team until Collins gets back.
Yeah, it's crazy how much of a step back that whole Houston offense has taken.
I can't start
this
him.
year. It's a shame,
Mm-hmm.
And last guy, one more guy in Indianapolis, right, Jason? We got to ask about wide receiver.
Alec Pierce.
Yeah, look, there's a couple wide receivers out there on the wire. There's Parker Washington and Jacksonville we like, but we really like Alec Pierce, and it's a correlation with the Flacco play.
Right.
He's not going to lead the team in targets. Michael Pittman will, but his targets are extremely efficient. He scores points on his targets. He's one of the highest point scorers per touch in the league, and he makes plays on the ball, being a big 6'3", 6'4" guy. And the way Flacco likes to deliver the ball, it's going to allow him in single coverage the opportunity to make some big plays for that offense, and we expect him to really take off over the next handful of weeks with Joe Flacco in there at quarterback.
Okay, a lot of great guys there. Always great insight. Somebody's going to pop out of those guys.
Oh, for sure.
Every time from Ian Ritchie. Right. Thanks so much, Ian. We really appreciate it. Let's send it over now to Sam Argier with a preview of our Week 9 GOATcast.
And Mike, we've got the weather map dialed up for Sunday and quite a bit of green on the map. That means rain, and we're going to highlight the wettest outdoor games as you start to set your lineups. The Fantasy GOAT Week 9 GOATcast is right after the break.
Okay, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. It's time for GOATcast. Let's head on over to meteorologist Sam Argier. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Mike. We're now in November and halfway through the season. And, of course, as we get deeper into the season, we keep an eye on colder air, wetter weather. We've got a little bit of both this weekend. Now, we do have rain chances for many of the games on the way this weekend. With the coldest day, not a huge surprise here, coming in on Sunday in Green Bay. Now, of course, Green Bay known as the frozen tundra, but not this weekend. We're going to stay above freezing, not only in Green Bay, but for all the games this weekend. Now, let's take you to the weather map. This is what we call Future Track. We take a look at what the rain and the temperatures are looking like as we head throughout the games. This is the late morning, early afternoon start, so the early games on Sunday. And a lot of the games pretty mild. Tennessee at 78 degrees, Carolina 69, just a slight shower chance. I do think the wettest games for the early slots will be in Ohio. So Cincinnati hosting Las Vegas and Cleveland hosting LA at 60 degrees. Looking dry around the Northeast, but a little bit cooler with mid-50s in Buffalo, New York, and in Baltimore for those early games. Afternoon slot, we'll see temperatures mainly in the 50s. Yes, the rain is there for the Green Bay game. Divisional matchup against Detroit. That's going to be a good one at 50 degrees and a little bit of wind as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on that for Green Bay. Also some shower chances with cool weather in Seattle at 52 with a divisional matchup there. And then Philly is hosting Jacksonville at 58 degrees, looking dry for that game. Sunday night game is indoors, but for those tailgating, it will be wet in Minnesota for the Indianapolis game. And then we are looking at some wet weather for Monday night. Another big game, rematch of the big game just a few years ago when Tom Brady took home the title with Tampa Bay. We all remember that. All that green means rain. So Kansas City looking wet on Monday night with temperatures in the 60s. So quite a few games looking wet, but generally as we head into later December and of course playoff time, that's when we start to see the really cold and kind of, there's nothing better than a snowy NFL game. Let's face it.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
It's crazy. We're already at this juncture where it's like weather. I mean, we're past the midway season point. This is nuts. It's already here.
It's coming up quick. The year's flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. All right, Sam, thank you. We always love that GOATcast. We'll be right back after a short break.
This is the Fantasy GOAT.
Well, it's officially the best part of the show, Jason. We're ready for GOAT lineup, so let's do this thing. As a reminder, here's how GOAT lineup works for everybody who's new to the show. So each week, Jason and I face off head-to-head by selecting one player at each position. But here's the catch. We can only use a player one time during the season. Right now, I'm sitting at 4-3, Jason. And Jason, you're 3-4. So
three unanswered?
We're neck and neck, I think.
I think three unanswered for you.
So it's very critical time here, midway season point. So let's hear your lineup.
All right, so we're starting off with an unpopular guy in fantasy right now. In fact, I've seen him show up on the waiver wire. We're talking about Dallas's Dak Prescott, but I think against Atlanta, it's going to be a score fest. So I kind of like Dak in this position. I also, in that same game, I'm going to roll with Bijan Robinson, the running back for Atlanta. Like you said earlier in the show, it's Halloween weekend, so have to go with Washington's Scary Terry McLaurin. I think last year, if I remember correctly, everybody was a scary name. This time I'm just going with Scary Terry. And then I'm piggybacking off of your success a few weeks ago with the tight end for Tampa Bay, Cade Otton. I want to get him in before Mike Evans gets back while he still is getting the targets.
Yeah, and he's really been shining. Plus now no Godwin, so he's a truly great play. He's a stud young tight end there with Tampa. Here's what I'm going to do with this week's lineup. I haven't really done anything Halloween-wise here, Jason, but let's take a look. So I'm going to be bringing up Sam Darnold. I've been riding him in a lot of leagues this year. He's got a big-time night game Sunday night, so that's going to be exciting to see him facing Indianapolis. I think it's going to be a shootout with him and Flacco. I like the Vikings D, but listen, they lost the past 2 games. So I think it's going to be tough for them to come out. They got to really make sure that they are playing hard, and I think it's going to be a toss-up. So we'll have a shootout there with Darnold in Minnesota. Running back-wise, I'm going to go Kareem Hunt. I haven't played him yet. He's getting a lot of touches. The interesting thing with him, playing against Tampa Bay, they allowed the second most and the third most catches. So second most yards and third most catches to receiving running back. So I kind of like him there. I want to see what he's going to do before Pacheco eventually comes back. And Chris Olave, he finally came to life in New Orleans. Derek Carr might be back this week, so I like him there. And lastly, Evan Ingram, no Christian Kirk. Brian Thomas might be out, so Ingram might be the guy against Philly that Lawrence is really going to target. So those are my guys right there, Jason.
Yeah, and that's a solid tight end. I got him in a couple leagues, so I'm hoping that you do well with him, because then I'll do well in my leagues.
There you go. All right, guys, good luck this week. We'll see you next time on the Fantasy G.O.A.T.